What was your "thank God I looked at the contract" moment? I had taken some helicopter flying lessons and was considering switching careers to that. So I found a flight school and applied for a student loan. Fannie Mae was the only one that would cover it. And when I got the final paperwork, the interest rate was higher than they told me over the phone, and the total payment to them was going to be well over $200,000. So I canceled and didn't go to flight school. I signed up for a gym membership on a whim and got sketched out when they initially charged me $250 instead of only the $90 for the month. I went home and legit didn't sleep because I was so mad I went through with it. I called and asked the next day to see if I could cancel, and almost everyone I spoke to said either no, it was impossible, or only if I moved to an area that didn't have the gym. I checked the contract, and you could cancel within the first 2 weeks, and I was only 3 days into the contract. You bet your ass I canceled so fast. Landlord agreed to let me move out a month early since he wanted to lease the apartment to someone else. We had to sign new paperwork to let me out of the original lease and to make me agree to be out by an earlier date. I knew he was a recently convicted forger, so I made sure to read what I was signing. He'd added the condition that if anything fell through with the new tenant, that I would still be on the hook for rent after I moved out. I called him out on it, and he said, "Oh yeah, I just added that part to protect myself." Then he stole my deposit. I still need to take him to court for that. Fuck you, John. Went to buy a new phone for $200. The employee told me they were closing soon and asked if I could come back the next day to sign the paperwork. The $200 mysteriously changed to $300 while the document was sitting in a desk overnight. Called them out on it and got it from somewhere else. My wife and I were at a car dealership buying our first car. The dealership was offering special no-interest financing for recent college grads, and we were using that to finance the car. The finance guy presented us with two options: a 3-year payment plan and a 5-year payment plan. The whole time he made it sound like the zero interest applied to both, and so we went for the 5-year plan to get a lower payment. Finance guy tries to get us to sign without reading the paperwork, but we weren't having that. Come to find out, the longer payment plan didn't qualify for the no interest deal, and we were getting charged 6.5%, which is a hell of a lot more than zero. We got pissy and threatened to walk out after we realized what they were trying to pull and got them to come down on the price. I know they've pulled that on other recent grads who don't read the paperwork and just sign. Some workplace that demanded at least 4 years of employment, or else I would have had to pay for those 4 years as you would pay for a course. My last restaurant job had a non-competition clause in the new handbook. I pointed it out to coworkers, few signed, and it was revised in a week. Went to pick up my car from the dealership, and it said by signing the paperwork, it gave them permission to lend my information to third parties. When I bought my new car 3 years ago, the finance department processed and had me sign paperwork at a certain price. Then they called me 3 days later and told me that their lender fell through and I would actually have to pay an additional $100 a month. I brought in the paperwork with the price I signed for and the keys. Told them they would stick to the contract or they could have their car back with the additional mileage. Apparently, this is a fairly common practice at car dealerships. At my high school, they set up Wi-Fi for us to use. However, in the terms of service, it said that by signing into the network, the school had permission to search the phone and look at its contents. I did not sign in, and have not to this day. Musician type person here. Label wanted to sign me. The entire contract was in very, very broken English. Amongst the idiocy on the contract were such gems as signing over my name, copyrights to all of my past songs, and being held accountable financially for any physical albums that didn't get sold. Buying my house. Husband signed the paperwork, and I went in later that day to sign. I started to read through the loan application. Mortgage lender said, "What are you doing? You don't have to read it. Your husband already signed it." I was like, "No, I want to make sure it is what I want." Loan was at $250,000 at 25%. Yeah, right. Didn't sign it and got out of there. Mortgage guy said he was going to take me to court. I said, "Go ahead, it would be cheaper than what he wanted me to sign." Took over all the mortgage stuff from then on. Mortgage guy was a friend of a high school friend of my husband. Viewed this great flat and was ready to hand over a deposit when I decided that I should actually read the rules they sent me once over again. I had read the one they gave me when I viewed the place, and it was a bit strict. And in general, I thought it was silly to have written rules when you're paying that much. But again, nothing I couldn't handle. Thank Odin, I checked. The rules listed in the email were completely different and included gems like, if you wish to bring a guest to the house, you must put forth a request in writing at least 1 week prior and must be approved by all members of the flat. There will be no guests allowed after 10 p.m. Absolutely no guests staying over. Any guest that comes over will require a $20 fee to go towards water usage for toilets. I'm like, you want me to pay over $1,000 a month for my own private room and not be able to invite people to come over without jumping through ridiculous hoops? Noped out real quick. There were a few other ridiculous things, but that took the buns. We were in the process of selling our business. My wife's car was registered under business. We sat down with our lawyer to discuss what is included in the sale, equipment, supplies, etc., and we clearly told him the car is not included in the sale. Well, guess what? We received the typed up contract from our lawyer, and he had added the car along with other things. Thank God we read it and had it removed before signing it and sending to buyer's lawyer. Was sent a freelance contract for a job offer in the media industry. I was a graduate at the time with 2 years experience, was offered £6.50 hourly pay, and with the expectation that I must be available to work 37.5 hours per week. I had to use my own car for business purposes, but couldn't claim expenses for fuel. And above all, the contract demanded full rights for the company to use any creative works I produced within 2 years before the start date of the position. I didn't accept the job. Mine wasn't really extreme, but my girlfriend and I were shopping for houses, and we were checking out a townhouse-style condominium. The price was within our budget, and the monthly maintenance fees were average for the area. It was an open house event hosted by a retailer, so the property's annual expenses were included in a pamphlet. I found that on top of the regular monthly maintenance fees, around $350, there was an additional expense of $800 every 6 months. I asked why there was an additional expense if there were already regular fees. She responded that the extra $1,600 per year was used to keep the fees low. I responded that the fees are average for the area, and many places in the same neighborhood are already lower. Long story short, it was a nice house, but we didn't pursue it further. I'm on board with the idea of condo fees if they cover things that I would normally pay for, like heat and water, snow removal, garden care, and if needed, additional expenses for major upgrades like new roofs or doors. But expecting 12 houses in the row complex to each kick in a $1,600 bonus every year without specific accountability isn't something that interests me. I went to a reasonably well-advertised jewelry store to pick up an engagement ring, knowing that I wanted to be a surprise and that she would want to pick out her own ring in due time. I made sure that the ring would be returnable for full price, and even for a full refund from that store when I bought it for about $900. After the proposal, my then fiancée found a ring she liked better at a different jeweler, so I went to return the ring. When I said I wanted to return the ring, the clerk said, "No problem, just sign this and we'll get you sorted out." I read the small paper, and it stated something very close to, "I now confirm this sale to be a final sale and cannot be refunded or returned for any reason." I read it, pen in hand, looked at her and said, "Why would I sign that?" She took the slip back, got her manager, and I was able to get the full amount returned via the same way I paid, on my debit card. U.S. Marines. I was enlisting for a program that's 5 years of active duty, age 19. Get the contract and it says 8 years. Nobody had ever mentioned anything about that. I ask, and the recruiters point out that it's an overall 8-year contract, but only 5 active. And the other 3 years I can serve in the reserves, or in the inactive ready reserve. They explained that IRR means you still are eligible for service on paper, but have no monthly or annual obligation, except keeping your address updated, and that all it means is, if World War III breaks out and they're drafting guys anyway, you'll come back in at your old occupation and rank. So I signed. Note, this was pre-September 11th, when we had no major wars going on. 9/11 happens. I do 2 tours in Iraq while on active duty, and 6 months before my 8 years is up, I get involuntarily recalled and sent to Afghanistan for 6 months. A lease I once had said, "The landlord agrees, at the renter's expense, to blah blah," with the blah blah being a list of deep cleaning services to be completed at the end of the lease. First-time renter here, moved out of uni residence to get my own place so I could take my family cat. Found a nice little apartment for cheap downtown, intended to move in with a roommate or 2 to split the cost, close friends of mine. The landlord didn't speak English very well, so although he insisted, "Oh yeah, everything good, everything okay," I wasn't sure he understood what I wanted. When he brought out the contract, it said in writing that pets were not allowed, and the cost would increase for more people living there. I pointed it out to him, but he retorted to the effect of, "I use this contract for all tenants. Those rules don't apply to you." I told him I wasn't signing unless he rewrote the contract, but he refused, saying he wasn't going to waste time pandering to paranoid people. I offered to write the contract myself and was baffled that he agreed to it, so I wrote up my own contract with super lenient conditions, making sure to protect my own ass. Had a lawyer look at it and notarize it, and now I live with my cat and roommates at the original cost.